As we are going through this chapter, we're going to weave in here eventually veterans. Okay, but before that, I want to have something wash over your mind: the word humility, sovereignty, God's. I want you to have weave through your mind and ask yourself, what do you find as valuable and important? Who is it that you are placing as preeminent? Is it the sovereign God whom we just sang about, the Most High God? And you'll see that in this text, or how the Jews refer to him as El Elyon, the Most High, sovereign over all gods? Or is it the things of your hands? Your gold, your silver, your wealth, your cars, your jobs, your education, your veteran status, your awards, your rank, your nation, your party. What do you see as valuable? And what is it that you celebrate? So in Daniel, briefly, Daniel is apocalyptic literature. Bear with me, okay? So school first, we'll get there, all right? 12 chapters. The Greek version of the Jews, the Septuagint, it has 15 chapters. But for what is in our Bible, it's 12 chapters. The first 6 are about court tales. So you have Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and what happened with them. You have what's going on with Daniel. You have what's going to end in chapter 6 with the prophets being put in the fire, and they come in, and I see one walking like a son of man, so on and so forth. And then the remaining chapters is apocalyptic. I see the Ancient of Days coming. 70 weeks have been determined on your people and the city to put an end to sin and the transgression so that the kingdom would come. So you went through, I'm assuming, Daniel chapter 4. Daniel chapter 4, King Nebuchadnezzar, laid humble. God humbled in such a way that he was like a beast, crawling on all fours, and then finally he ends with this testimony. At the same time, my reason returned to me, and for the glory of my kingdom, my majesty and splendor returned to me. My counselors and my Lord sought me, and I was established in my kingdom, and still more greatness was added to me. Now I, Nebuchadnezzar, praise and extol and honor the King of heaven, for all his works are right and his ways are just, and those who walk in pride he is able to humble. This is the last time you hear about Nebuchadnezzar, the greatest king of Babylon. Between the end of chapter 4 and what we're about to read in chapter 5, 47 years have passed. So Daniel is not a young man. You know, they try to make Daniel like a young boy and all that. 47 years have passed. In the midst of that 47 years, 4 other kings have come. One was a little child and was assassinated by the father of the king we're about to read, who's not really a king, Belshazzar. So the king at this time, his name is Nabonidus. But Nabonidus has this fetish, he has this passion to worship the god Sin, Marduk. And he is out in his empire building temples, and so he leaves his son, Belshazzar, in charge of the kingdom. So it is as if in our government, if the president is unable to serve, the vice president is serving as the president, even though the vice president is not really the president. Are y'all following me? So Belshazzar is in this place. His father is gone. His father killed a kid to become king. He is now king, and Belshazzar decides to have a party. All right, bring up the scripture. So let's read. So King Belshazzar made a great feast for 1,000 of his lords and drank wine in front of the 1,000. Belshazzar, when he tasted the wine, commanded that the vessels of the gold and of silver that Nebuchadnezzar, his father, had taken out of the temple in Jerusalem be brought, that the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines might drink for them. Then they brought into the golden vessels that had been taken out of the temple, the house of God in Jerusalem. If you've got a Bible, it should underline that. And the king and his lords, his wives, and his concubines drank from them. They drank wine and praised the gods of gold and silver, bronze, iron, wood, and stone. Immediately, the fingers of a human hand appeared and wrote on the plaster of the wall of the king's palace opposite the lampstand, and the king saw the hand as it wrote. Then the king's color changed, and his thoughts alarmed him. His limbs gave way, and his knees knocked together. The king called loudly to bring in the enchanters, the Chaldeans, and the astrologers. The king declared to the wise men of Babylon, "Whoever reads this writing and shows me its interpretation shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around his neck and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom." Then all the king's wise men came in, but they could not read the writing or make known to the king the interpretation. Then King Belshazzar was greatly alarmed, and his color changed, and his lords were perplexed. The queen, because of the words of the king and his lords, came into the banqueting hall, and the queen declared, "O king, live forever. Let not your thoughts alarm you or your color change. There is a man in your kingdom in whom is the spirit of the holy gods. In the days of your father, light and understanding and wisdom, like the wisdom of the gods, were found in him. And King Nebuchadnezzar, your father the king, made him chief of the magicians, enchanters, Chaldeans, and astrologers, because an excellent spirit, knowledge, and understanding to interpret dreams, explain riddles, and solve problems were found in this Daniel, whom the king named Belteshazzar. Now let Daniel be called, and he will show the interpretation." Then Daniel was brought in before the king. The king answered and said to Daniel, "You are that Daniel, one of the exiles of Judah, whom the king my father brought from Judah? I have heard of you that the spirit of the gods is in you, and that the light and understanding and excellent wisdom are found in you. Now the wise men, the enchanters, have been brought in before me to read this writing and make known to me its interpretation, but they could not show the interpretation of the matter. But I have heard that you can give interpretations and solve problems. Now, if you can read the writing and make known to me its interpretation, you shall be clothed with purple and have a chain of gold around your neck and shall be the third ruler in the kingdom." Then Daniel answered and said before the king, "Let your gifts be for yourself. Give your rewards to another. Nevertheless, I will read the writing to the king and make known to him the interpretation. O king, the most high God gave Nebuchadnezzar your father kingship and greatness and glory and majesty. And because of the greatness that he gave him, all peoples, nations, languages trembled and feared before him. Whom he would, he killed, and whom he would, he kept alive. Whom he would, he raised up, and whom he would, he humbled. But when his heart was lifted up, and his spirit was hardened so that he dealt proudly, he was brought down from his kingly throne, and his glory was taken from him. He was driven from among the children of mankind, and his mind was made like that of a beast, and his dwelling was with the wild donkeys. He was fed grass like an ox, and his body was wet with the dew of heaven, until he knew that the Most High God rules the kingdom of mankind and sets over it whom he will. And you, his son, Belshazzar, have not humbled your heart, though you knew all this. But you have lifted up yourself against the Lord of heaven, and the vessels of his house have been brought in before you. And you and your lords, your wives, and your concubines have drunk wine from him. And you have praised the gods of silver and gold, of bronze, iron, wood, and stone, which do not see or hear or know, but the God in whose hand is your breath, and whose are all your ways, you have not honored. Then from his presence the hand was sent, and this writing was inscribed. And this is the writing that was inscribed, Mene, Tekel, and Parsim. This is the interpretation of the matter. Mene, God has numbered the days of your kingdom and brought it to an end. Tekel, you have been weighed in the balances and found wanting. Paris, your kingdom is divided and given to the Medes and the Persians. Then Belshazzar gave the command, and Daniel was clothed with purple, and a chain of gold was put around his neck. And a proclamation was made about him that he should be the third ruler in the kingdom. That very night, Belshazzar, the Chaldean king, was killed, and Darius the Mede received the kingdom, being about 62 years old. So a feast of wrong gods with right things. What was so important about this hardware, these cups? What was so important about them? 47 years earlier, Nebuchadnezzar went in to Israel, the city of David, Jerusalem, and laid it waste. Why? Because in essence, Israel broke every commandment God had given her. And as a result, God had let them know that a nation was coming and that it would take Israel into bondage. And then, like any king is going to look for the wealth. And the wealth of Israel was in the house of God that Solomon had built. And in that house was all the instruments that were for what? A feast with God. Because you do understand that when the sacrifices were given in the Old Testament, it was a feast. That when you brought your ram or your bull or your pigeon, it was killed, it was slaughtered, and it was eaten. And who ate it? You and the priest. It was a feast. It was a feast. You, the priest, and God sat down and had a feast. Feast that we just did. But then there were some instruments that was just for the high priest. And God himself in the Holy of Holies. Nebuchadnezzar takes all of that. Fast forward 47 years. Belshazzar remembers a prophecy, Jeremiah 25. And Jeremiah had prophesied that after the captivity of Israel, that Babylon would be destroyed. And the Jewish writers say this. So you got to go to like Jewish commentators who are not Christian, right? You got to go to these things called the Midrash and all that. And this is their commentary. So you got to trust what they're saying, okay? And they said this about Belshazzar. He was just 1 year too early. And so this feast was their God was wrong. This feast, this most high God that Nebuchadnezzar humbled himself about and gave praise to, they were wrong because Babylon in all of her glory is still here. And so let's have a feast. And to compound it, let's use their stuff. So let's take these right things to worship the right God, but let's use them, my lords and my concubines and my prostitutes, my side girls and all that. Let's have a party to celebrate his failure. All of that is what's going on right here. It's not just that it's decided to have a party. They are spiting the living, holy God who gives all men and women breath and who put Belshazzar, Nabonidus, the previous kings, Nebuchadnezzar, every ruler, every president in their seats. And so they worship these gods. And these gods represent what? Silver and gold and copper, destruction and war and justice, fertility. They are putting their value in destruction, wealth, justice. These are our gods. Status, cars, house, what country I belong to, what political party I vote for, how much money I have. These are our gods. Let's take right things to worship wrong gods. Are you following me? Next slide. And so, a feast is interrupted. A finger appears and writes. Ancient Near East, we've got to move from this direction. And writes, Mene, Mene, Tekel, Upharsin. It interrupts the feast. Would it interrupt you if all of a sudden, during Thanksgiving dinner, on your wall, these words start to show up and all of you are like, huh. And Belshazzar's reaction is an emotional reaction. He's gripped with fear. His knees are knocking. Fear. Why would a king need to fear? You have power to take life. Why would you be anxious? I like the fact, why would your color change? What is it about that writing that has caused such a reaction into you that you have to call for the wise for understanding? You know what's beautiful about Jews? The way they repeat things. The finger of God. Anybody else know where else the finger of God has been mentioned? Because it was the finger of God after the Exodus that wrote the tablets. So in Exodus, and it repeats it again in Deuteronomy, that Moses received the tablets of God that were written by the finger of God. During the Exodus, it was the finger of God that brought the gnats as one of the plagues. And then the Ancient of Days appears in Israel. And he says, if I'm casting out demons, it's by the finger of God. And if so, the kingdom has come upon you. The Ancient of Days being Jesus. Pay attention when you see things repeated. The finger of God. God is so angered by the misuse of the instruments that are only reserved for his people to have a feast with him, that he appears before Belshazzar and he has a message for him. And so Belshazzar calls for the wise men. They don't know. The queen appears and she says, I know somebody. I know a man who's wise. I know a man with understanding. I know a man who is filled with, from their understanding, the spirit of the gods. From our understanding, it is the spirit of God. Pay attention. And so this feast is interrupted, and the king needs this interpretation. Next slide. So a foreign tongue speaks. Foreigners are important in our text. This church has been going through this series without a country. Daniel is without a country. The Israelites are without a country. Jeremiah told them, hey, y'all gonna be here for a minute. Get married, build houses, plant gardens, seek the peace of the city in which I have sent you, exiled you to. And so these foreigners that have been brought here in chains against their will, they are now having an impact and influence in the kingdom of Babylon. And so Daniel appears. And Daniel reads the message. In reading and interpreting this message, Daniel lets Belshazzar know there's a lesson that you should have learned already. There is a lesson in your history that you should know already. There is a lesson from previous rulers that you should be applying to your very situation right now. And the very fact that you refuse to take heed to the lesson of Nebuchadnezzar has bringing something upon you. The fact that you refuse to acknowledge the Most High God, the fact that you refuse to reject these other gods, the fact that you still invest your worth, your power, your significance in these material things, it is a lesson that you still have not learned. And it is a lesson that is going to cost you something. Are there lessons that we need to learn as a nation, as a church, when foreign voices are in our presence? When foreign voices speak, when foreign voices cry out? Is there a lesson that we need to heed from past leaders, past Christians, that we do not repeat what they did? Is there a lesson, veterans, that we need to take heed to so that we don't end up in other wars? So that future generations don't suffer some of the things that we have had to go through. And so this foreign tongue, Daniel offers the interpretation. Next slide. Mene, tekel, upharsin. Mene. Double meanings here. It's a weight, 20 ounces. Tekel, another word for it is a shekel, half an ounce. The other meaning is you have been weighed, you have been numbered, and it says you have been found wanting. There is another nation that is coming. And this nation is going to take your nation away from you. You have been weighed and you have been numbered. You do not measure up. Why? Because you will not acknowledge God as the Most High God. He's clear in this. Because you will not acknowledge the Most High God. Because you still maintain the mindset that it is you that place yourself on this throne. Because you think that you can just take life and you can withhold life. Because you think that all of this is about you and these earthly things that have been created. But these earthly things, gold and silver and bronze and iron and all of these things, they can't see, they can't hear, they can't answer your prayers. Your cars can't answer your prayers. Your house can't answer your prayers. Your rank can't answer your prayers. Your nation can't answer your prayers. None of these created things are God. But yet we value them higher than God. And now we have foreign voices coming from the south, coming from overseas, looking for compassion, looking for people to act like representatives of the Most High God. And so are we learning the lesson? Do we hear foreign voices speaking? What is the writing on the wall? Next slide. So you have been numbered. Mene, tekel. Mene, tekel. Most High God is valuable. So if I put him on the scale, it should go. But you try to counteract it by putting these created things. Most High God gives life and breath, but we try to put value in things that we've created, thinking they give us life and breath and significance. No. Numbered things. Next slide. The weight. You've been numbered and weighted because you keep trying to counteract omnipotence and omnipresence and infinite love and mercy and life with these created things that do nothing. Belshazzar, have you not learned from Nebuchadnezzar? Nebuchadnezzar learned that none of these are of value, so he put them away so that he could have what was most valuable, the Most High God. Veterans, it's not about your status and your rank and your retirement and that you got a DD-214 or anything like that, or where you served or who you served under. It's not about your status in the city of Conway and where you live, whether it's on the west side or on the east side. None of those are of value. It's the Most High God. Mene, Tekel, Parsim. Waiting, for the Persians and the Medes are coming. And because you have not learned the lesson, just like the Israelites did not learn the lesson, and I used you to take them into bondage, I will use the Medes and the Persians to take you into bondage. When will we learn the lesson? Are we so prideful to believe that this nation is going to go on in perpetuity? Are we so prideful to believe that at some point God in his majesty and justice won't visit something on this nation? Have we put so much pride in the greatest military on the face of the earth to think that we cannot be overcome? Babylon at that time had the greatest military until the Medes and the Persians. But then Alexander the Great. Until then the Romans came. Have we not learned history? And so if earthly kingdoms come and go, if earthly kingdoms are here but just this long in the eyesight and the time of God, then whom should we be soldiers for? And what kingdom should we raise our right hand for? Because in Daniel chapter 9, this same Daniel has been waiting for an answer to prayer. And this Daniel receives a vision about the Ancient of Days. And the Ancient of Days would come and he would set up a kingdom that would never end. He sees a kingdom come, go. Kingdom come, go. Kingdom come, go. But then there's one kingdom who arrives, this king, the Ancient of Days, the Ancient One. And how long is his kingdom? Forever. We are without an earthly country. Yes, we live here, but this is not our country. Kingdom, country, government. This is not our government. Yes, I raise my hand to support and defend the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. But that oath and allegiance pales in comparison to the allegiance and oath to the one who is the Ancient One, the one who is the Most High God, the one who gives us life in Jesus Christ, the one who gives us the Holy Spirit, the one who gives us gifts to love him and to love one another, the one who empowers us, the one who gives us the power to bear the fruits of love and joy and peace and long-suffering and goodness and gentleness and meekness. This is the one, the most high God. And so we have to ask ourselves, who do we place our significance in? Who do you place your significance in? I heard it said by Tim Keller, former pastor at Redeemer in New York. He said, you know what your God is when you experience loss. And so if it was all taken away, and all you stood in there is what you got on right now, would he still be God? Would you be like Job and say, blessed be the name of the Lord? We should learn the lesson of Nebuchadnezzar. We should learn the lesson of Belshazzar. That what is not written on us is that we are weighed and numbered and found wanting. But that we would find joy. Now let's get to the good news. We would find joy, ladies and gentlemen, brothers and sisters. We would find joy and in the satisfaction in knowing that Jesus Christ is our Most High. And that he has brought us into this kingdom. And he lets us know, now, let's have a feast. That's how the book ends. Revelation is a recapitulation of Daniel. And in Revelation, there's a feast. There's a feast. And he says, blessed are all of you who are invited to the marriage supper of the Lamb. And it's going to be a feast of using right things in the presence of the right God. It's a feast that does not celebrate somebody's exile, but it's a feast that celebrates a welcome of men and women and children whose citizenship and status does not matter, whose ethnicity does not matter, whose gender does not matter, whose age does not matter. All have been called to enjoy this feast, this celebration of this right God who is sovereign over all. Let's pray.